Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. What Ty and I are doing here, this is going to be a series of episodes about how to invest in real estate and if investing in real estate makes sense for you. And so in our first episode here today, we're going to start very high level and just talk about why someone should invest in real estate. We'll talk about why we do ourselves. And if you're someone that's considered investing in real estate, maybe we'll talk through why it makes sense or maybe why it might not make sense for your situation as well. But hopefully you can walk away from today's episode with just a better understanding of what it means to be inspired to invest in real estate and kind of why people do it in the first place for their long-term wealth.
So it sounds like we want to start with, generally why we each invest or how we got started investing.
Yeah, let's start there. Yeah.
So I guess I knew about real estate investing because my family was doing it when I was younger in high school, but I never had the thought to ask them why they did it or how they did it. I've learned more about it over the course of time, but essentially I got, post college, I was just working the W-2 and I had a buddy of mine that told me about bigger pockets and real estate investing. I'm like, well, my parents do that. I probably can figure it out too. We went, instead of thinking that we're going to move out and, go move in with our significant others, instead, me and my buddy went to go buy a duplex together using a FHA 3.5% down loan. So one of the strategies you can use, that's a very easy, low barrier entryway to get into real estate. That all kind of started from there. We were able to lower our living costs, buy a building for a lower down payment. And now 5 years later, we've moved out and it's a cash flowing asset for us. I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's how I got my start, how I knew about it, where I learned from was bigger pockets, and then what my first step was.
So Ty, why do you like investing personally for you? What's your why as far as why you thought it was interesting and why you do it in the first place?
I guess overall, I think financial freedom is why most people are going to find real estate investing. So by having that first deal, even though I went on it 50-50 with a buddy of mine, 5 years later, we've moved out of there and we actually have cash flow each month. That is after we collect our rents, the income, you subtract out the mortgage payment, and then a percentage of that also is going to be operating expenses. After all said and done, we actually have cash flow each month that we could, if we wanted to, pay ourselves a paycheck each month. And there's a dollar amount associated with that. It's not enough to retire on today. That's why we buy multiple properties. But in probably 10 years, after we've bought a couple other deals as well, we're going to be able to be financially independent and be able to choose to work on what we want, when we want, and get paid whatever we want and focus on those projects. And that's kind of the financial independence, is essentially having enough income to cover expenses so you have the freedom to do what you want when you want and buy your time back.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I think that's, to me, why I like investing in real estate too. And how I got started, I moved to Milwaukee about 5 years ago. I was actually over at your duplex with you and Tim. And I was like, you guys are pretty smart. I'm not that much dumber than you both are. I could probably figure this out as well. And I bought a duplex, saved up, bought a second duplex, then bought a 5-plex last year. And I guess somewhere along those roads, I knew I wasn't a person that didn't want to work until I was 60. I feel like the typical method that we're taught is get good grades, go to college, get good grades, get a good job, save up, put money in a 401k, a Roth IRA, invest in stocks and bonds, save this nest egg until you're 62 and a half, retire, and then now you're free, you're financially independent, which I think for certain people is great. If you're someone that likes that, that's awesome. But I knew for me that I didn't want to have to work an 8 to 5 every single day for my entire life. And so I kind of stumbled into buying my first duplex. I then read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which if you guys haven't read that or are listening, to me, that is kind of like the holy Bible of the mindset of financial freedom and the power of financial freedom. Because to me, what financial freedom means, the definition is it replaces your cost of living. So you don't have to work if you don't want to. But what that means for me is that I have the time to live the life that I want to do. Because unfortunately, living takes money. We're not just living here rent-free, check-free, energy-free. But that to me is, if you want to live a life where you have the time to spend with your family, the time to do what you choose to do and want to do and not have to be handcuffed to an 8 to 5 job or career, real estate investing is an option for you to build wealth slowly, accumulate properties, accumulate cash flow passively. But then over time, that is my retirement. You know, like I tell my buddies that I don't invest in my 401k. I don't invest in my Roth IRA. When I told my mom that, she probably cried. And when I tell my buddies that, they think I'm literally insane. But the thing is, it's like I've got just the 3 properties right now that as a value, if I were to sell those, are probably over $1 million in assets. And after 25, 30 years, when those are paid off, that's $1 million in today's value that I now have. And if we give that 25, 30 years, I sure hope that those are going to go up in value. They are, if we look historically, and those properties will be paid off, they'll be cash flowing. And then that is my nest egg right there. And so that is the power of real estate investing and why I do it.
And power, you know, going back to time, not only getting your time back, but it also takes time for that to come to fruition. But in order to get that started, I think you just named a favorite book that kind of got you started. I think a favorite book that kind of I found mid real estate investing journey is Set for Life by Scott Trench. That's really essentially goes through the concept of runway, meaning you have to delay gratification in order to save up enough money to get that first down payment, whether that's a house hacker, lower down payment. So that's a lower barrier to entry, or literally saving up 25% down to buy your first deal. You're going to have to delay your gratification on vacations, doing the things when you want to do them. You're going to have to hunker down, decrease expenses to buy that first deal so that time can work on your side. So getting enough money to take that risk of buying an investment property, but just because it's risky doesn't mean it's not a good decision. Investing in 401k has risks because it's in the stock market. There's risks and there's education to get yourself there. I think that was one of the biggest concepts for me is most people choose not to make the decision because they haven't delayed their gratification to take that next step. They're uncomfortable. They don't want to be uncomfortable. It's not easy, but overall it's pretty simple to get there.
Yeah, I love that. So we kind of talked about like why we each invest. We talk about like why I would say most people invest too. It's kind of the same things. It's that financial freedom, that independence. Let's kind of break down a bit. I feel like there is real estate investing, I would say, was taboo. You know, when I tell people that's my retirement, people still scoff at me.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people think that you can only invest in real estate if you're a multimillionaire.
Yep.
What does it take, Ty, to invest in real estate? And like, help me understand that for someone that's like, I can't do this. I don't make 200K a year. I don't have a bunch of money saved. Like, what are your options for someone like that?
Yeah. So I think for an option like that is, again, we would love to help somebody in our local market, but this can be done anywhere. House hacking is how both of us got started. And I think it's one of the lowest barrier to entries of getting started. And again, let's say you take I'm going to grab my calculator.
Explain what house hacking is.
House hacking is in most cases buying a duplex, potentially all the way up to a fourplex, so a 2-unit up to a 4-unit, using an owner occupant style loan that allows you to put less money down. So the easiest example that most people hear about is using FHA, which is the Federal Housing Administration. It's a government subsidized kind of loan program to help first-time homebuyers. But essentially, I'm not sure if you call it a loophole, but you can use it to buy any residential property, which is 1 units to 4 units. So house hacking is specifically focused on I'm just going to say a duplex. You can get a bigger building up to 4 units, live in one side and rent out the other. And the goal of that is essentially to have as much of your monthly payment for buying that home covered off by a renter who's next door, or by renting out the rooms within your house to get as close to zero. So it's a huge win because you can do a lower down payment option. It's a huge win because you can usually have your monthly expenses for living be less than what it costs to rent in the area. And you've just literally bought a potential in the future cash flowing asset for, I guess you'd almost call it 6 times less than what it takes to traditionally buy an investment property, which is 25% down.
Yeah. So I love that strategy. I think that's how a lot of investors that don't have a ton of cash get into it, because that's how I got into it. You got into it. I work with a lot of first-time homeowners that are like, I want to buy a duplex to rent out the other side. And they don't even know what house hacking is. And it's like, well, do you know Bigger Pockets? Have you heard of house hacking? They're like, no, what is that? But it's a little cheat code I think of. So like, get in the investing space. And I don't want to get like too minutia in the numbers here, but if you look at your return on investment, putting 3% down when you run the numbers of when you're going to get that 3% down back, you can think of that as either the reduction in your cost of living that you're saving, or you can think of that as when you do move out and you have a property that is cash flowing. I just got a phone call that I canceled. And when you think of it in terms of cash flow, that you're getting that money back within a very quick amount of time, which is to me one of the lowest risks to getting into investing is in that house hack route. And also it can be a single family home as well, that you're renting out different units in different bedrooms to friends too.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you kind of like, how do you get started? Well, a $300,000 property that you do 3.5% down on is $10,500 down. You're going to have closing costs in there as well. Let's just call it an even $15,000 to get into even a really, not even like the average duplex, but a pretty expensive duplex here in the area for the Milwaukee area. $300,000 duplex, $15,000. If you can be saving $500 a month on your living expenses on 15 grand in 30 months or, just about 2 years, just on living costs alone, you're going to make that money back. But at the same time, when you move out, you're going to make your money back on cash flow in the future. And that's like where you're saying like, yeah, it's essentially dummy proof of if you can live somewhere for cheaper, why would you not do that? That just works for basic personal finance.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's one of the best strategies to get into for someone as a new investor. Let's talk about someone that's a new investor that's maybe considering getting into it. What are some good resources that you'd recommend for them to like just further educate themselves on, and what kind of steps should they start doing to kind of just get in that investor mindset and see like what should they do next and how should they operate?
I think the first thing that I'll say is investing in real estate or investing in anything takes education, but that education doesn't have a start and an end date like high school, like college. It essentially goes on forever. And so it's something that you want to enjoy learning about, enjoy talking about, like we do right here. We're just, filming an episode about talking about real estate investing because we're passionate about it. The first place you're probably going to go to is something like Bigger Pockets. There's other online resources, and start just engaging in the content that they put out. I think there's a ton of like, welcome to investing. Here's the things you need to know. I think they've got like a 50-page ebook that talks about all of the investing strategies and at least the 10,000 foot view of what that looks like. That's where I'd start. But then how I learned was literally on my daily commute that was 30 to 40 minutes long both ways. I listened to podcasts from Bigger Pockets and other sources that I essentially spent for the year before I bought my duplex. Every single day, probably 200 working days, I spent essentially 200 hours listening to podcasts, which was like my 101, my 201 of what is real estate investing, what is house hacking. And then I kept on listening after I bought my duplex for another 3 years to learn all the other ways you can invest as well. So like now I've got my 301, my 401, working on my master's in real estate because every day I learn a little bit more.
I love that. Yeah, the education phase never stops. There's always new and unique ways to invest and hear stories of people that have success investing. I think that I personally like the book Rich Dad Poor Dad as just like the first book to ever pick up, it's not even about real estate investing. It's just about the idea of financial freedom and kind of rethinking how to think about creating money passively to free up your time. I think Bigger Pockets has then tremendous books about real estate investing. I've got a couple behind me right here, but I would buy one of those, like How to Invest in Real Estate. Amazon it, $25. One of the best returns you could ever find. Listening to the podcast. I don't think you need to listen to a year's worth of content by any means, but I think it's helpful because the more knowledgeable you feel about it, the better prepared you will be to find those deals, to find something you want to get into.
Yeah, I think you're learning enough to be dangerous and to have intelligent conversations with your team, which includes at some point a real estate agent, a lender, and a property manager if needed. You need to be able to know what you're talking about to even get somebody to want to work with you. And you're essentially just getting over that first hurdle of, I know generally what I'm talking about. I know the vocabulary. and then you can leech off of their expertise to accelerate your journey a little bit faster. It's not going to take you a year to actually get the information you need to take action. That just happened to be my case of generally how long it took. So like everyone learns at their own journey, and sometimes you're saving money for that down payment, or you're figuring out what that partnership's going to look like with your buddy to go buy that first duplex. But yeah, you have to get yourself to a point where you can speak about it intelligently, is like that first hurdle.
Yeah, I love that. I will say that me personally, I think about my life. You have, every person has those defining moments when they look back on their life. You know, I think it's always like moving to a new city, taking that job, buying that duplex. It's always those moments in your life that you feel in the moment extremely uneasy about. And those are always the moments that you look back at and you go, thank God I did that.
Yeah.
And buying my first duplex, I was terrified. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know what's going on. Like, am I making the right decision? And I look back at that and I'm so happy that I stuck to my gut. I trusted what people that succeeded in investing, I listened to their stories. And I said, at a certain point, I kind of went, fuck it. And I said, we're doing this and this is going to work. And I'm so thankful I made that decision, because it's not easy. I'll say that it, like, buying the first property is scary. It's difficult. It's work. You know, like, you still have to manage the property. It's not like you can just put it on autopilot and it's good forever. But it is the kind of stress that I'd rather have in my life, and the kind of, I don't mind having that kind of fear, because I know I'm setting myself up for success. I want to say that it's all daisies and roses and it's an easy decision. But the reality is, if I flash back 3.5 years ago when I bought my property, I was not in a good place. No, I mean, I was okay. You know, I wasn't like freaking out, but it's stressful, but it's stress to have. You know, there's good stress, there's bad stress, and it's not. Some people I work with, though, they're like, let's do it, and I'm fine with it. But just understand that too is very normal to go through when you're buying your first investment property.
Yeah, and most things that are good for you in life, whether it's eating right, exercising, going to school, getting education to get a better career, all those things include challenges. All of them include you having to grow personally, whatever else it might be. Like, it includes getting injured at the gym. It includes falling off the wagon on a diet. Like, all of those things happen as a part of natural life and things that are hard. Like, but is that the kind of life you want? Do you want to have the life where it's just easy because you can check off at 5 o'clock, but you have no responsibilities at all? You're going to get a certain return on that lifestyle versus, once a week, maybe for an hour, I have to go figure something out with the few properties I own, but I'm willing to spend that 1 hour to, in 10 years from now, by myself, essentially maybe only having to work part-time. So saving 20 hours a week because I sacrificed it today. Like, it's the long-term vision of what you want your life to look like, because if you don't start it today, you won't have it in 10 years.
A wise man once told me, this wise man is you. You said the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. And that is so true in real estate investing. And
let's be clear, I did not come up with that. I stole from someone else, but it's very true. I mean, it applies to stock investing and it relates to real estate investing, but keep going.
Yeah, no, and I was going to say that's, at some point, it's easy to sit on the sideline, run numbers, listens to podcasts. That's kind of the trap that I fell into, but nothing happens unless you take action. And that is typically the hardest part about any big decision, is taking that action to make it happen. But it's the most important one that you have to do for it to actually come to fruition.
Yeah. And using that tree, like we've all driven through those neighborhoods that have that beautiful tree covered canopy. And you're like, man, what would it be like to have a neighborhood like this with all these trees? And then you go home to your new subdivision and you don't plant a tree ever the entire time you live there, because it costs $1,000, because you've got to water it. You've got to learn how to take care of it, make sure it doesn't die in the first couple of years and establishes its roots. It's like so applicable, but then like, yeah, well, I don't want to actually do that work. It'd be nice to have, but I'm not going to do the work. Like it literally, it's direct application.
Yeah. Well, cool, Ty. Well, I think this has been really good. A lot of fun here. We'll make some more episodes here. Anything that you want to say before we kind of wrap up here?
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to like relationships, which we'll talk more about in future episodes. I'm sure it's like, until you do get off the podcast and out of the pages of the book and just start talking to real people at meetups, reach out to the agents, the lenders, the people that are actually investing in real estate, you're not going to be able to hear the stories of success. You're just going to hear maybe your own self-doubt in your head. But as soon as you hear more examples of people being successful at doing it, just like we hear about people being successful all the time of going to college and getting great careers, that's a repeated story that you just know is proven to work. The more people you surround yourself that have proven that the strategy works, the more likely your brain's going to tell you, I don't need to be afraid of this. It's going to be something I can be successful at too. Just like my story that we started this with, I saw my parents do it. They were successful. They did it for 20 years. And now they just sold me a couple of their properties on seller financing and they get mailbox money. I've seen it happen. I'm just fortunate that I didn't have to go find that environment to put myself in. I grew up in it. And that's like definitely a huge advantage of mine. How are you, the person watching this video, going to create that environment of people around you that aren't going to say, you're an idiot. Why would you do that? You want to be a landlord? Instead, surround yourself with people like, dude, why are you waiting? You need to become an owner and start this journey today.
Yeah, that's really good, man. That's great. Well, thank you for the time today, Ty. This has been good. We'll keep making these and more segments too. If there's anything else you want us to dive into, let us know specifically, but we're basically going to follow the process of, this is kind of a 101, the why of why you should invest. And as we continue this segment, we'll get deeper and deeper into the weeds, into the education phase and what you could start learning about, to the acquisition phase, to the management phase, and all of these kind of fun things. So more to come. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in.
And if you got any questions, just drop them in the comments below. We'll get right back to you.